13 days before my master's graduation, my brother told me to skip it and babysit. I told him no. So I went ahead and canceled his Hawaii hotel reservation. You won't believe the audacity, but my own brother, Mark, tried to make me miss the most important day of my academic life, my college graduation, just so I could babysit his kids for his anniversary trip. But this time, I wasn't just going to roll over. This time, I had a plan, and it was going to change everything. It all started 13 days before my graduation. Mark called me, all cheerful, announcing he was taking his wife to Hawaii for a surprise anniversary. He wasn't asking if I was available. He was telling me he'd drop off his 3 kids the night before, expecting me to watch them for 4 days. The problem? Those 4 days were my graduation weekend. I had been planning this ceremony, this celebration, for months. This wasn't just any degree. It was my master's, earned after 7 grueling years of night school, working full-time. I explained all this to him, how this was a huge milestone for me, how I'd invited 62 people, including our grandma who was traveling all the way from Florida. And Mark? He laughed. He actually laughed. He offered me a walk during the November ceremony instead, as if walking across a stage meant nothing. He said his anniversary was a once-a-year thing, but my education would come later. Then he dropped the bomb. The Hawaii tickets were non-refundable. He called me selfish. Can you believe it? Selfish. For putting paper before family. He actually said his kids needed their aunt more than a silly cap and gown. My blood was boiling. I refused, of course. That's when he got angry. He confessed I was his backup plan all along, and he couldn't disappoint his wife with my attention requirement. He said I was immature for wanting claps, and that real adults didn't need ceremonies to feel accomplished. I asked him, through gritted teeth, why he couldn't just find a babysitter. He pulled out the classic line, "I don't trust strangers with my kids. Family should support each other." This from the man who'd always watched his kids for free? It was such a manipulation tactic. And I realized this wasn't new. This wasn't a one-off. Mark had a history of this. I missed my LSAT because he showed up with his kids, claiming an emergency. I ended up missing the test entirely and had to wait months to reschedule. At my bachelor's graduation, I spent the entire ceremony in the bathroom with his vomiting toddler instead of walking across the stage and celebrating with my friends. Mark had a knack for customizing every single one of my milestones, twisting them to fit his convenience. But this time I planned. This time I was ready. I told Mark he could drop off the kids the morning of his flight. His excitement was palpable. He even had the gall to say, "This will be great preparation for having kids." The morning of his flight, he dropped off his 3 kids at 8:10 a.m. for a 10:05 a.m. flight. I told the kids about my surprise, and their faces lit up. As soon as Mark left for the airport, I dressed Lily, Ava, and Lucas in their best clothes. "We're going to a very important party," I told them. We arrived at my graduation site. And you know what? We found all my guests. I had promised my nieces and nephew that they would be special guests, and they were. When my name was called, all 3 of them shouted, "That's our aunt," louder than anyone else in the auditorium. I had even made little placards for them to hold in the front row that said, "Our aunt is amazing and the first in the family to get a master's." The whole auditorium erupted in laughter and applause. My 9-year-old niece, Lily, took photos with my phone while the 6-year-old twins, Ava and Lucas, threw flower petals I'd given them. It was pure magic. After the ceremony, we went to a restaurant where I had a special kids booth set up with college-themed coloring books, graduation hats to decorate, and umbrella mocktails. The kids were buzzing, telling everyone their aunt was the brightest in the world and worked so hard for this degree. They had even learned a graduation song in the car. Grandma Eleanor, bless her heart, gave them sweet certificates and honorary degrees. Everyone made them feel like VIPs at an adult party. Meanwhile, in Hawaii, Mark and his wife arrived only to find their hotel reservation canceled. Because, you see, I considered my kids' graduation an emergency, and I used Mark's credit card to cancel his reservation. A last-minute motel change cost them twice as much. Mark called, absolutely furious, screaming that I was crazy, that I'd ruined his marriage, and that he was going to beat me when he got back. I muted my phone and just watched the texts flood the screen. Lily showed off her ceremony photos to our friends at the kids' table. The chocolate-frosted twins made 3 trips to the dessert buffet. Grandma Eleanor boasted to everyone at the head table, my diploma proudly displayed next to her plate. My best friend from work pulled me onto the dance floor. Even though my phone vibrated constantly in my pocket, I was too busy celebrating to even look at it. We danced with the kids. Lucas taught everyone how to floss, and his sisters dissolved into giggles. Ava's earnest attempt to twirl like a ballerina distracted me from my phone's incessant buzzing. The restaurant manager even came over to congratulate me, saying the kids had told him at least 7 times that their aunt was the brightest. My grandmother, moving slower than everyone else, still refused to sit, insisting my celebration was well-deserved. I finally checked my phone after another ding. 19 more angry texts from Mark. I read the first few where he called me selfish and manipulative, then put it away. The kids smiled through the entire 3-hour celebration, completely unaware that their father was screaming 2,400 miles away. The restaurant closed at 10 p.m. As I loaded their birthday goodies and leftover cake into my van, the kids chattered excitedly about their favorite parts of the day. At a red light, I checked my phone. It had stopped vibrating, but 5 voicemails had appeared. After settling the kids with a movie at my apartment, I closed my bedroom door. I had to hold the phone away from my ear for the first voicemail. Mark was yelling. He called me every name he could think of, sounding hysterical as he described the hotel cancellation. In the second message, he threatened to tell the whole family the worst about me. The third message was even nastier, threatening to make me regret my choice. The fourth message detailed every dollar the hotel cancellation cost him, demanding immediate payment. The fifth listed all my failures, including childhood mistakes I'd long forgotten. Mark's final message was the scariest. He threatened to deal with me when he returned and warned me to watch myself, as if I needed proof of his threats. I saved all his voicemails and screenshotted his texts. I returned to the living room to find the kids still engrossed in their movie, completely oblivious to my shaking hands. Later that night, Grandma Eleanor called, checking in before she went to her hotel. I stepped onto my apartment balcony, shielding the kids from our conversation. She asked how I was, and I admitted Mark's texts were intense. After a long silence, her voice quieted. She revealed that Mark had always done similar antics, expecting others to change their plans for him. She told me how, 12 years ago, Mark asked her to delay her retirement party because he was going fishing that weekend. She changed the date, and half her friends couldn't attend. She recounted another incident, Mark's request to start my aunt's wedding 2 hours early for his son's baseball game. When my aunt declined, Mark arrived late and made a grand entrance that completely distracted the bride. Grandma Eleanor's voice trembled as she said she was proud of me for finally fighting back. She admitted she'd been too kind to Mark as a child, always giving in to his tantrums. She said he needed to learn that his schedule and wishes weren't everything. I cried when she said she was glad I had the courage to do what she should have done years ago. We talked for another 25 minutes about Mark's actions and the ripple effect on the family. She advised me not to let him shame me into apologizing before hanging up. The next morning, my alarm went off at 6:30, and out of habit, I grabbed my phone. The family group chat had 58 notifications. I scrolled back to Mark's long 1:12 a.m. message, Hawaii time. His detailed statement claimed I had promised to watch his kids and then ruined his marriage by canceling his hotel reservation in anger. He said I was jealous of his happy marriage and tried to ruin his anniversary vacation. My mom begged me to call her. My dad asked what happened. My aunt immediately jumped to Mark's defense, writing 3 paragraphs about how I should have rescheduled my graduation for November like Mark suggested, and that family should always come first. 2 uncles expressed their disappointment. My cousin simply left a question mark. I lay on my bed, reading these notes while the kids still slept in the living room. Mark had played the victim perfectly, making me look like a bitter, attention-seeking sibling. So many family members were supporting him without even asking for my side. My mom's message was the hardest to read. She sounded so worried that I'd done something wrong. Before uploading, I drafted a 15-minute response in my Notes app. I addressed the family discussion calmly and objectively. I explained that Mark knew I wouldn't miss my ceremony. Then, I included 3 photos, Lily, Ava, and Lucas in the front row, with their placards, flower petals, and my diploma. My kids, I wrote, enjoyed my graduation as special guests. Then I uploaded screenshots. Mark's initial text demanding I skip graduation, his dismissive comment about silly cap and gown, and his claim that grown-ups don't need ceremonies, and I was immature for wanting claps. The final screenshot showed him saying his Hawaii tickets were non-refundable, implying my schooling was less important. I sent it. I watched the chat message. For 30 minutes, nothing happened. The chat said 18 people had seen my post, but no one responded. They were probably reading Mark's texts, seeing his own words, understanding how he spoke to me. My phone stayed silent until the kids woke up, asking about breakfast. I made pancakes, checking the group chat every few minutes, but it remained quiet. Mark's angry letters paled in comparison to this silence. While washing breakfast dishes, I got a private message from my cousin Emily. After years of waiting, she was glad I had finally called out Mark's manipulation. She shared a story I'd never heard. For years ago, Mark asked her to watch his kids 3 days before her own engagement party because his regular sitter had supposedly canceled. Even though Emily couldn't miss her party, Mark insisted that family helps. She left her party early to pick up his kids, missing speeches and the cake cutting. She later learned his regular sitter hadn't canceled. He had simply declined weekend childcare. Emily wrote that 6 other family members had similar stories but never confronted him. Mark always presented it as an urgent support request, so relatives missed important events or changed their lives. An uncle missed his daughter's school play. Another relative skipped a job interview. My aunt even cut a vacation short. Emily said everyone had just accepted Mark being Mark for years. She was proud of my opposition and hoped it would inspire others to set limits. Your screenshots showed many people how Mark really handles family, she said. At 1 p.m., I answered a call from an unfamiliar number, thinking it was a restaurant employee about yesterday's celebration. Instead, a man yelled that I had ruined his best friend's marriage. It took me a second to recognize Mark's college friend, whom I'd met twice at family events. My stomach sank. He claimed Allison was threatening divorce over the Hawaii fiasco, and it was all my fault. He insisted Mark was a good man who had just asked his sister for a favor, and I had selfishly destroyed his anniversary vacation. After his rant, I quietly asked if he had seen Mark's texts. He said it didn't matter because family helps. I asked him, would you skip your own master's graduation to babysit someone else's kids for their vacation? He paused, then mumbled that it was different. When I asked how it was different, he grumbled about Mark paying for the vacation. He complained I was twisting things and hung up without saying goodbye. I held the phone in my kitchen, feeling oddly pleased that even Mark's best friend couldn't justify his actions. My phone rang again while the kids were playing in the living room. Allison's name appeared on the screen, and my stomach knotted. I answered from the balcony, expecting her to scream like Mark. But her voice was quiet, cautious. She asked if Mark had told me to skip my master's graduation to babysit. I confirmed it and offered to email her the texts. She said yes, so I sent them while she waited. It sounded like she was in a hotel lobby or restaurant. 45 seconds of silence passed after I sent the emails. Then she quietly asked if the kids had enjoyed it. The question shocked me so much I almost didn't answer. I told her they had fun and cheered the loudest in the auditorium. When she asked what else the party did, I described the kids' table with coloring pages and mocktails. After another long pause, Allison asked if I made the signs for the kids to hold. I said I did, and that everyone at the ceremony loved seeing 3 tiny kids so excited about their aunt graduating. Her voice lowered as she requested the images. I showed her photos of the kids throwing petals and holding the placards. Then Allison began sobbing silently on the phone. She said Mark had told her I would volunteer to watch the kids at my apartment, but never mentioned my graduation. She apologized, said she didn't know, and insisted she wouldn't have gone on the trip if she'd known. I told her the kids had fun. She thought it was wrong because she felt she had made me choose between my school and my family. Her voice grew louder, tears replaced by wrath. Mark had told her I would volunteer to take the kids and help with their anniversary vacation. He had acted like I was helping them, not sacrificing my milestone. I told Allison about the hotel cancellation and that Mark gave me his kid emergency credit card. I considered his children attending their aunt's graduation an emergency worth the cost. She laughed bitterly. I can't argue with that logic, she said. After hanging up, she said she needed to talk to Mark. I waited on my balcony, wondering how that conversation would go. Allison called 75 minutes later, shaking with anger instead of tears. She said Mark had been complaining for months about how I never helped with the kids and prioritized school. He had convinced her I was selfish and uncaring about family. Why would my husband lie about his own sister? She asked. As she recounted their conversations, she realized how often Mark had manipulated situations to make me look bad. He told her I had canceled babysitting at the last minute, when he asked during my finals week or when I was working. Despite my refusals, he booked kids' birthday parties during my class periods and wouldn't postpone them. Allison trembled as she recounted Mark's lies, designed to make me sound like a mean aunt who didn't care about family. She said she had judged me solely on his account and never considered my side. She realized Mark was lying to avoid asking why I couldn't provide last-minute childcare. She apologized again and said she needed time to consider her marriage. I apologized for her situation, but I honestly didn't know what else to say. She denied my apology was merited. Hanging up with Allison felt like the ground had shifted beneath my feet. A call came in, and I saw Mark's parents' number. I knew what was coming, so I let it ring 3 times before answering. Before I could even greet them, Mark's mom demanded that I apologize and pay for his hotel stay. She called my unauthorized credit card use theft. After her rant, I gently told her Mark had given me the kid emergency card. I then told her that his kids went to their aunt's graduation after he tried to make me miss it. That's an emergency in my book, I said. Before she could argue further, I told her I had to check on the kids and hung up. I placed the phone on the kitchen counter with shaky hands, realizing I'd been holding my breath. 18 minutes later, my best friend Brooke arrived with 2 bottles of wine and a bag of takeout. She saw my expression and pushed past me into the apartment, heading straight for the kitchen to get wine glasses. She poured us generous amounts and made me sit at the table, encouraging me to start the story. My story included Mark's request to skip graduation, the hotel cancellation, and Allison's calls. At the end, Brooke just gaped at me. She dropped her wine glass and called me her hero for finally resisting Mark's manipulation after all these years. She recalled all the times I'd met his needs, canceling my birthday dinner because he needed a babysitter or working from home for a week when his kids had chickenpox. Brooke said seeing those 3 kids celebrate my graduation was the perfect response to Mark's years of disregarding my achievements. She raised her glass to honor my self-prioritization. My shoulders relaxed as we clinked glasses. 3 days later, my phone rang again while the kids were making a blanket fort in the living room. It was my mom's number, and seeing it still made me feel sick, knowing Mark had probably reached her. She immediately said I should have been the bigger person and delayed my graduation for November, as Mark suggested. Her dissatisfied voice always made me feel like I was 9 again and had done something wrong. I told her I had earned my master's after 7 years of night school, working full-time, and 62 people, including her mother from Florida, had watched me walk. My mom interrupted me to say, family always comes first. Now, she said, my selfishness was ruining Mark's marriage. She claimed Allison was threatening to leave him and take the kids over my petty ceremonial concerns. Her words made my blood pressure skyrocket. I had to hold the phone tightly to avoid throwing it across the room. I took 4 deep breaths before answering, determined not to yell. As calmly as possible, I asked her how many life events she wanted me to sacrifice before I could prioritize myself. I reminded her Mark had ruined my bachelor's graduation and my LSAT. This, I said, was my time after years of hard work. My mother went silent. Her breathing changed. In a low voice, she said she'd call me later to consider what I had said. I knew she'd discuss it with my dad, deciding which side to take in this family conflict. After we hung up, I sat on my sofa, staring at the wall, while the kids played happily in their fort, completely unaware that their parents' marriage was crumbling in Hawaii. Grandma Eleanor called from her hotel again that night. She advised me not to let my mother shame me for graduating. Then she revealed something new. My parents always excused Mark because he was the oldest, and they had different expectations, she said. Eleanor told me Mark would throw huge tantrums as a child to get his way. Mama, she said, gave in rather than endure the yelling. She knew it was from her parenting mistakes with my mom, and she was sorry I'd suffered so long. Eleanor said my grandfather would have been proud of my self-defense. She cried as she said she wished she had stopped this when Mark was young instead of seeing him manipulate everyone. Her words meant everything. I thanked her. After hanging up, I felt understood by at least one family member. After 3 more days with me, the kids were still talking about graduation like it was the best day of their lives. Their college projects involved cutting graduation hats from construction paper and glitter and decorating diplomas with my name written on stickers. Lucas and Ava practiced their own graduation with their toy animals, walking across the coffee table while cheering and throwing petals. Lily, my 9-year-old niece, really wanted to attend my doctoral graduation so she could throw more petals. I told them I was done with school and wouldn't be graduating again. I was thrilled she thought I was smart enough to be a doctor. She looked upset but then smiled, suggesting I could throw flower petals for her graduation. I promised to attend. Her grip was too tight to breathe. That day, I got a text from Daniel, the coordinator at the restaurant where we had our graduation celebration. Done something wrong. He said the party was great and asked if I was okay after hearing me on the phone with an upset person yesterday. I explained the basics via text. My brother tried to make me miss my graduation to babysit, so I took his kids instead. Daniel was shocked that my brother would try to make me miss my master's graduation after 7 years of night school. My coworkers understood how hard I worked for that degree and how much it meant to me. When he offered to be a character witness to prove I wasn't a selfish monster, I laughed for the first time in hours. I thanked him, saying I might accept if my family kept acting like I'd. Allison called me again on the third day of Mark and Allison's Hawaii vacation. She had a new voice, weary but determined. She accused Mark of lying about my availability and asking me to skip graduation to babysit. She said he initially disputed everything and suggested I was exaggerating, but then she showed him my text conversations with screenshots of his original chat. Mark eventually confessed, but he fought, saying my graduation wasn't as important as their marriage, and I should have understood. Allison said their tension had ruined their vacation and made them hardly talk in their hotel room. She sounded exhausted and heartbroken as she described how Mark kept trying to persuade her without apologizing for what he'd done to me. Even though it wasn't my fault, I felt terrible that their marriage was suffering. Allison started asking about times Mark had ruined my big life events. I told her about the LSAT incident, how he claimed an emergency and I missed my test date, having to wait months to reschedule. I told her about spending my bachelor's graduation in the bathroom with his sick kid instead of walking across the stage. As I gave example after example, Allison was surprised, saying she didn't know the pattern was so widespread and long-standing. She realized her spouse had a serious problem with respecting others' limits and putting himself first. She said she didn't know what this meant for their marriage, but now she realized. I felt terrible for her as she learned hard truths about her husband and children's father. Later that night, my dad called. I braced myself for another family unity talk. He said Mark and I had made decisions that worsened the issue, trying to be neutral. He suggested we sit down and talk like adults to resolve this as a family after Mark returned from Hawaii. I liked that he didn't automatically support Mark like my mom, but I was upset that he was treating this like a two-sided issue when the facts were so clear. Mark had forced me to sacrifice important moments for his convenience for a decade. So I declined. I told my dad I'd talk, but I wouldn't apologize for graduating. Fair enough, he said. After we hung up, I realized my dad was trying to be diplomatic, but he wasn't demanding I make amends with Mark like everyone else. The family group chat heated up the next day. My aunt wrote a lengthy letter about family being eternal and forgiving and uniting in times of trouble. She suggested we sit down to resolve family issues after Mark returned from Hawaii. I held my phone for almost 3 minutes. Then my cousin suggested Mark apologize before everyone else arrived. Her message got 4 thumbs up instantly. Soon, 8 relatives had given thumbs up. No one answered my aunt's unity message. I put my phone away and focused on the kids. That night, I ordered pizza from the place the kids always picked. The twins fought over the last breadstick at my paper plate-strewn kitchen table. Lucas stopped, looked at me intently, and wondered why his dad was so angry over the phone yesterday. He said he'd heard his mother crying in the bathroom after talking to him. My stomach dropped, but I spoke normally. I told him adults argue, but everything was fine. He nodded and returned to his pizza, but I could tell he was still thinking. I tried to ignore what these kids were learning for the rest of supper. Instead of worrying about their parents fighting in Hawaii, they should have had fun at their aunt's. Lily joined me in cleaning up after dinner. Her expression suggested she would say something important. She truly desired college, like me. She wondered if her dad would try to keep her from graduating. The question made me grab the counter. This 9-year-old knew her father's routine. She linked his attempt to disrupt my graduation to her future. I knelt to her level and promised to attend her graduation no matter what. She could be anything and celebrate her successes without interference, I told her. She hugged me and thanked me. This tiny kid shouldn't have to worry about this. So I held her and tried not to cry. The next morning, Mark texted me from Hawaii. He and Allison returned early. They cut their vacation a day short because tension prevented them from enjoying it. Mark wanted to talk before picking up his kids. My stomach dropped as I read. Since his airport call 4 days ago, this conflict had escalated. I anticipated trouble. I told him to pick up the kids, but we wouldn't talk until he calmed down. I reminded him of his last voicemail threat to beat me. He replied a few minutes later, angrily calling me dramatic. He promised to treat the kids civilly. I didn't believe him, but I had written proof of his promise to be calm. A neighbor knocked at my door at 2:40. She looked worried and said a man was driving slowly outside my building, viewing the windows for 18 minutes. I thanked her and looked through my front window. Mark's car was across the street. He was clearly planning what to say to me. My hands trembled as I called Brooke. I asked her to delay Mark's arrival. She said she'd be there in 11 minutes and asked to bring her boyfriend. Without thinking, I agreed. I knew Mark wouldn't act out with her big, rugby-playing boyfriend there. With witnesses, I didn't fear Mark would hurt me, but I wanted him to know I was supported. Brooke and her boyfriend arrived 11 minutes later. A knock at my door followed their brief sit-down. I saw Mark through the peephole. His face was red and exhausted from sunburn. I opened the door. He barely looked at me before asking where his kids were. When they heard him, the kids fled the bedroom. He excitedly greeted them, and they talked about graduation over each other. Lily showed him her photo on my phone. Mark's jaw tightened as he scrolled through photos of his kids holding signs about their amazing aunt. His face reddened with each photo. The children ran to get their belongings from the bedroom. Mark turned to me and said, "We need to talk." I was expected to reconcile with his wife. To his face, I said I had nothing to fix. I guarded and entertained his kids. His lies ruined his marriage. Though my heart was racing, I kept my cool. Mark blushed and spoke harshly. Brooke's boyfriend rose from the couch. He didn't speak or threaten, just stood there. Mark reconsidered his words after seeing him. "Get in the car," he snapped at his kids. Little Lily carried the stuffed animal I bought her, while the twins ran with their backpacks. Mark stopped at the door. "The family will learn about me," he said over his shoulder. He said, "I'd regret choosing paper over family." He left with the kids. The door closed. My legs felt weak. Though less than 4 minutes, it felt like hours. I slid to the floor, knees to chest. Brooke clutched my shoulders next to me. I cried nonstop. Not the shocking breakdown I expected. I cried quietly, exhausted, unable to breathe. Brooke initially remained silent. She let me cry in her arms. Her boyfriend waited near the door and whispered to wait in the car for privacy. After he left, Brooke pulled me close and said I did nothing wrong. She said Mark's anger was a reaction to realizing he couldn't control me. After years of making me feel guilty for living my life, she said he was losing power. I told her I was stupid for crying and wiped my face on my sleeve. She said I wasn't dumb. She said family was harder to fight than strangers because they knew what to push. We sat on the floor for 18 more minutes as I calmed down. Brooke made me drink water and reminded me that Mark paid double for a hotel while I walked at graduation with 3 kids cheering. They won despite his yelling, she said. The next day, my phone was quiet. No angry Mark texts, no Allison voicemails, no family group chats. It felt odd after 4 days of notifications. Allison texted me at 1 p.m. She asked to meet for coffee without Mark. I contemplated the message. I didn't expect her to reach out without Mark. I said I could meet her. We chose a cafe halfway between us for the next afternoon. All day, I wondered what she would say. Part of me feared a trap. Maybe Mark sent her to yell at me in person. I hoped she wanted to hear my side, not guilt me about their marriage issues. I ordered coffee 12 minutes early at the cafe, sitting at a corner table facing the door. Allison arrived on time, looking utterly exhausted. Her ponytail was messy, her eyes bagged. She ordered tea and sat across from me without looking up. Her hands surrounded her cup as she stared at it. She looked at me and said she hadn't slept. She remembered Mark exploiting situations. I shut up and let her speak. I didn't recognize her examples. She said Mark told her parents she was too busy for visits because he didn't want to drive. Even though he never called a babysitter, He told her friends it failed. He told her sister the kids were sick and couldn't attend her birthday. But he just wanted to watch football. The pattern was everywhere she looked. Allison put her cup down and faced me. She said Mark had portrayed me as the selfish sister who rejected family help for years. She had trusted him because she had no reason to doubt. She apologized for judging me without facts. Her apology was raw, filled with sarcasm directed at herself. She had given Mark an ultimatum. She would take the kids to her parents, or he would start marriage counseling. She claimed she wanted her kids to learn not to lie and manipulate for what they want. I appreciated her apology, but I told her she didn't need to apologize for believing her husband. Head shaking, she said she should have asked more questions. Her reason for ignoring the signs, she confessed, was convenience. That was her husband and her children's father, so I spoke carefully. I detailed Mark's disruption of my milestones. His fake emergency caused me to miss my LSAT, I told her. I told her about spending my bachelor's graduation in the bathroom with his sick kid while everyone else walked. I told her about all the times he expected me to drop everything for him and made me feel guilty for declining. Each story upset Allison more. She realized his behavior wasn't about me. Putting himself first was his habit. She had excused him, thinking he was stressed or overwhelmed because she loved him. But now she knew it was deeper. We talked for 3 hours. More tea for Allison. More coffee for me. She claimed Mark's parents always pardoned him and demanded compliance. She said his mother called her yesterday to forgive him and stop worrying about one vacation. This phone call made her realize the problem went beyond Mark. The whole family had taught him to expect favors. She said his mother told her Mark was sensitive and needed support like a child, not a grown man with 3 kids. That conversation, she said, opened her eyes the most. Allison said she saw how Mark had learned and accepted this behavior. Before we left, Allison invited me to family therapy with Mark. Professionals should hear both sides, she said. I didn't want to get involved in their marriage stuff. Her hand touched mine across the table. She suggested someone else evaluate Mark's behavior besides her. He should hear from a manipulated person outside their marriage. It's time to think, she said. Part of me wanted to reject them and avoid their mess, but part of me knew Allison needed help fixing things. I agreed to one session, but stressed that I was supporting her, not reconciling with Mark. I declined family mediation where both sides take equal blame. She nodded, understanding. She said the therapist would focus on Mark's behavior, not my excuses. Allison hugged me before leaving the cafe. She said she was glad I stood up for myself because it revealed things she'd ignored. She thought Mark's reaction to being rejected showed he expected everyone to comply. Despite the discomfort, she appreciated my honesty. That night, a call from Mom. Her voice had changed since we last spoke. She sounded worried, not mad. She said she had told my dad and grandmother everything. She realized she'd been defending Mark too long. She regretted not supporting me sooner. She said she should have seen the pattern years ago instead of telling me to be flexible. I wasn't sure if this was real or if she'd change her mind tomorrow, so I didn't say anything. She kept talking about how she put Mark's comfort before mine. She said her grandmother had shown her the damage. My mom lowered her voice. She always caved to Mark's tantrums when he was younger. She said she avoided his meltdowns by taking the easiest route, so she realized she taught him to expect everyone to accommodate him. She apologized for her parenting mistakes and that he turned out this way. She praised me for setting boundaries despite family strife. She promised to support my relationship with Mark. She stopped pressuring me to reconcile or accommodate him. I thanked her for her apology. We discussed changes for 35 more minutes. She said she'd treat us equally, not compromise. After hanging up, I felt lighter than I had in days. 9 days passed before the therapy session. I worked most of that time, trying not to think about sitting with Mark while a stranger analyzed our family issues. I changed my outfit 3 times the morning of the session. Nothing felt right for confronting your brother's manipulation with professional help. Even though my stomach was flipping, I wore jeans and a sweater to look calm. The downtown therapist's waiting room had uncomfortable chairs that made you sit straight. Mark and Allison were already there. Mark crossed his arms and ignored me. His jaw was clenched, indicating he was ready to fight. Allison looked exhausted but focused, like she'd prepared all week. Her smile and thanks were small. Sitting across from them, I grabbed an unread magazine. The therapist called us in. After 12 minutes, I felt tense entering her office with its soft lighting and plants. Despite its intended relaxation, a notepad-holding woman, about 60, with kind eyes, introduced herself and explained the session strategy. Everyone could speak freely. The pattern she noticed was disgust. Mark shifted, wanting to leave. "Why are we here?" asked the therapist. Mark jumped in first without waiting. He said I had betrayed him by canceling his hotel and ruining his anniversary. I had turned his request for family help into a revenge plot. He shouted about the last-minute hotel price and how Allison barely spoke to him the whole trip. I caused his marriage problems by holding grudges over nothing, he said. The therapist took notes without speaking. After Mark finished, she asked why he expected me to miss graduation. Mark struggled to speak. He said he had suggested I delay it until November. His therapist asked if he understood scheduled ceremonies. Mark said, "Yeah, but family emergencies come first." She inquired about that. The therapist noted. Mark told Allison he booked the trip. The therapist looked at me while writing. "Take a breath and restart." I said Mark came with his kids, claiming an emergency, but he wanted to go to a concert, so I missed the LSAT. He brought his sick kids to my bachelor's graduation, so I spent the ceremony in the bathroom instead of walking across the stage. I said, this master's degree required 7 years of night school while working. Mark called 13 days before graduation to ask me to skip it for Hawaii. My hands shook, but my voice was calm. Mark turned red as I listed each example. The therapist asked Mark about these events. He replied, "Yeah, but those were different situations." His response was unclear. He requested assistance only when needed. The therapist asked if seeking help meant others had to miss important events. She asked Mark, "Family helps each other?" Mark fell silent. Then Allison spoke. Her anger was audible in her steady voice. Mark manipulated their marriage, she told the therapist. He told her parents she was too busy to visit when he didn't want to drive. He canceled her friends' plans after never calling a babysitter. He lied about our conversations to convince her I was selfish and never helped with the kids. Allison said she discovered he'd label me the problem sister for years. Mark interrupted, but the therapist raised her hand. "Listen to his actions' effects," she advised. As Mark closed his mouth, his leg jumped in frustration. Allison persisted. She said Mark's mom said he was sensitive and needed extra support after Hawaii. That conversation revealed Mark always expected special treatment. Seeing his reaction to my refusal revealed a marriage pattern she'd ignored. The therapist asked Mark what he heard. Mark said everyone wanted him. My therapist denied that request. She asked again what his wife and sister said about his behavior. Long silence from Mark. He concluded that they thought he was selfish. The therapist said their thoughts weren't important. It required recognizing his habits. Mark put his needs and schedule before others' time and accomplishments in every example we shared. She said this violated autonomy. She said Mark believes families should help. The therapist agreed, but advised respecting others' refusal. It wasn't a help request. She said that required compliance and guilt when he didn't win. Mark showed several expressions: anger, denial, confusion. The therapist asked if his pattern hurt relationships. Mark guessed defensively. The session lasted 35 more minutes. The therapist asked Mark why he demanded others' time. His family obligations were unclear, always resisting. She made him consider the consequences of his demands. By the end, Mark looked exhausted. Without confessing or apologizing, he agreed to individual therapy. He must change this pattern or risk his marriage and family. The therapist warned. She stated it clearly. I noticed Mark's expression change. Perhaps not acceptance, but the first sign that this was real and had consequences. We left the office quietly. Allison tapped my arm and thanked me for coming. She added that having concrete examples from outside their marriage helped the therapist see the full picture. I saw Mark walk silently to his car like someone had popped his confidence balloon. He looked less angry and more deflated. I went home exhausted but relieved. Despite not fixing everything, the session began to change. 3 weeks later, Dad called to suggest a family dinner. Just him, Mom, Mark, and me. "We must clear the air and move forward," he said. My stomach churned. I felt sick thinking about sitting across from Mark at a restaurant and pretending everything was fine, but avoiding him forever was impossible. We were family, whether I liked it or not. I agreed, but made my dad promise a public meeting. I wasn't doing this at a house where emotions could explode without witnesses. We chose a chain restaurant halfway between my apartment and my parents' house. a place with laminated menus and 3 bright lights. Arriving first, I got a back corner table. My parents arrived 6 minutes later. Mom hugged me and whispered, "I'm proud." Dad squeezed my shoulder. Mark, in a button-down shirt, arrived last, looking uncomfortable. He slid into the booth across from me and stared at the menu like it was the most interesting thing ever. We discussed work and weather while ordering drinks and appetizers. No one mentioned Hawaii, graduation, or therapy. Finally, Dad cleared his throat and indicated we should discuss what happened. Mark slowly placed his menu down. His first real look since sitting was at me. He apologized for making me miss graduation. His voice was stiff, like he was reading from a script. He apologized for threatening voicemails. He said work and trip planning were stressful. My jaw tensed. Excuses still accompanied his apology. I accepted his apology but demanded change. I quit as his childcare backup. He had to politely ask for my help and accept rejection. Mark nodded but didn't speak. My dad spoke up. After considering our family patterns, he realized Mark had expected special treatment for years. "It must end," he said. Mark's eyes widened. He had expected our parents' support again. My dad persisted. He said Mark was an adult with a family and needed to respect others' schedules and boundaries. Mom apologized for allowing Mark's behavior. She said making excuses for him since childhood was unfair to me. She promised equality in the future. He appeared shocked. Without speaking, he opened and closed his mouth. He was processing that our parents wouldn't defend him. The rest of dinner was awkward but productive. The rules were basic. Mark had to ask for help 14 weeks in advance. I was free to refuse without guilt or manipulation. Our parents would be impartial and not force me to accommodate him. Mark accepted everything but looked genuinely surprised. Leaving the restaurant made me feel lighter. It wasn't a miracle dinner. Although Mark rationalized and blamed others, it was progress. I had parental support. It wasn't perfect, but Mark had apologized. And now, we had clear boundaries instead of my implicit promise to always comply. 2 weeks later, Mark texted me, making me do a double take. He had scheduled a date night with Allison in 14 weeks and asked me to watch the kids. No telling, no demanding, just please. He told me to let him know if I was busy. My brother used complete sentences and acknowledged my schedule, so I stared at my phone to understand. I texted back that I could and thanked him for asking early. A thumbs-up emoji. No debt or guilt. Nobody preached family duties, just thanks and the date. This was typical sibling behavior. I felt weird about feeling weird. A few days later, Grandma called, proudly. She told relatives I had started something. My cousin told Mark she had stopped last-minute babysitting and needed 9 days' notice. My aunt said she couldn't change her plans for him. Allison and his father-in-law had announced my graduation, and his father-in-law lectured Mark on respecting others' time. Grandmother said Mark was learning the hard way that he couldn't force everyone to support him. She seemed proud I had started a minor uprising. I added, I just wanted to walk at my own graduation without drama. She says, sometimes one person standing up makes others realize they can too. People were talking about Mark's family grapevine stunts, and they went along to keep the peace. Work took my mind off family. My boss called me into her office to congratulate me on my master's. She invited me to apply for a 4-month management position. I would manage a small team and get a big raise. My commitment to finishing school while working full-time was valued, she said. Mark would never understand how validated I felt leaving her office. He had made me feel selfish for years of schooling. Education opened doors he'd never have. After work shifts, I studied all nights. I wrote papers on weekends instead of relaxing. They saw tangible results without ceremonies or paperwork. A package arrived at my apartment with Lily's return address. Inside was a drawing of her school graduation ceremony. Although only I wore a cap and gown, she drew us all. The stick figure smiled big, and she wrote, "My aunt is the smartest," in crayon at the top. The 9-year-old was focused. She cared because she saw my hard work and success. A simple black frame sits next to my diploma on my desk. I remembered why standing up to Mark was right. Every time I saw it, I remembered his kids watched and learned to respect others' goals. 6 weeks after graduation, Allison texted me, inviting me to the kids' play. Mark would be there, but they were doing family things, and the kids wanted me to see their performance. I agreed, because I wouldn't punish the kids for their father's behavior. The elementary school auditorium was packed with parents holding recording phones. We sat next to Allison after seeing her. On her other side, Mark looked awkward in a button-down. He nodded as I sat. I nodded back. We stayed silent. The lights dimmed, and the kids in homemade costumes entered the stage. Lily took her forest-scene tree role seriously. The Rabbit twins waved to us in the audience. After the show, kids ran around with juice boxes and cookies in the lobby. We felt stiff, like we were trying too hard to be normal, but the kids loved seeing their aunt and parents. That mattered. Mark cleared his throat and approached me as we left. "Thanks for coming," he said. He said his therapist was helping him understand why he always put himself first. "After doing it all your life," he said, "it's hard to spot the pattern." Though still struggling, he was becoming more aware. Though change would be slow, I appreciated the honesty. He seemed more self-aware than ever. I commended his effort. After another awkward moment, his kids ran up and demanded he race to the car. After waving, he left. Allison said, "Thank you," squeezed my arm, and followed her family. That night, I browsed vacation packages on my couch with my laptop. For years, I had set aside money for Mark's emergencies that would require me to drop everything. Money for last-minute flights if he claimed urgency. Funds to cover my bills if I had to take unpaid leave to help him. He had waited to use that money. I realized I didn't need it. I didn't back him. I switched accounts and checked beach resorts. Brooke squealed when I announced our graduation trip by phone. We celebrated my master's degree, 7 years of night school, and learning to prioritize myself without family or guilt. After 9 days in Mexico, I felt lighter than I had in months. 9 weeks after graduation, routines were almost normal. Mark sometimes overreached. He'd ask for favors or guilt me about family obligations. But now, when I declined, he retreated instead of manipulating. Therapy helped, despite slow progress. Allison seemed happier when we spoke. She said marriage counseling was improving communication and teaching Mark to consider her feelings before acting. Her expectations were reasonable. She knew his transformation would take time. Small wins were better than none. My boss called me into her office 5 weeks after our promotion discussion. Spreading paperwork on her desk, she smiled. Upon request, the management position was mine. Pay raise, small team, more responsibility, flexible schedule. Just then, I signed the offer letter. That night, I told my parents and grandmother to clear their weekends for dinner. My reward. We met at a nice downtown restaurant. Mom hugged me and spoke highly of me. She regretted not supporting me sooner instead of always accommodating Mark. Dad raised a glass to my success. Grandmother winked across the table and predicted my success. My promotion confirmed my late-night studying and sacrifices. I always valued education over Mark's ease. He'd long ignored my degree for his needs. That degree boosted my career in ways he couldn't understand. 11 months after graduation, Mark's anniversary rolled around again. My phone rang Tuesday afternoon as I organized files at my new desk. As his name appeared on the screen, I prepared. He spoke more calmly and tentatively when I replied. He requested time to talk. I accepted and awaited manipulation, with Allison beside him. He wanted to celebrate their anniversary at a 90-minute bed and breakfast over the weekend. He called 14 weeks in advance to ask me to watch the kids that weekend. No coercion or assumption. Even though I was free, I checked my calendar when asked. The weekend worked for me. When I agreed, he seemed relieved. He said he appreciated it, knowing I was busy with my new job. After we hung up, I stared at my phone. Mark had respectfully asked for my first adult help. Therapy worked. Maybe not completely, but enough to make him realize when to switch tactics. Mark dropped off the kids Friday night with their bags and a weekend meal and activity plan. He listed their pediatrician and emergency contacts. Allison hugged and thanked me before leaving. The kids rushed into my apartment to see their aunt. Lily told me about her school project on famous scientists over homemade pizza. Since the twins disagreed on a movie, I let them vote democratically. No one mentioned parental conflict. Nobody seemed anxious or worried. Like other kids, they slept over at their aunt's. The Park Science Museum was our Saturday destination. Lucas gathered rocks, and Ava befriended every dog. Lily wanted an office job and asked about mine. We played board games, ate ice cream, and watched cartoons late. The kids helped me flip pancakes Sunday morning. We were exhausted but happy when Mark and Allison picked them up after crafts and reading. Allison took me aside while Mark loaded the kids into the car. Not in years had she looked so calm. Their weekend away was perfect, she said. They reunited without kids or stress. Her next statement shocked me. She said Mark tried hard. Counseling taught him that others' schedules and feelings mattered. He sometimes performed old habits. He sometimes put himself first. When she called him out, he stopped and thought instead of defending himself. She said progress was slow but real. He learned to consider others' feelings before making decisions. She squeezed my hand and thanked me for opposing him at graduation. Their family's wake-up call, she said. 8 months after graduating, I was leaving the grocery store with 2 bags when someone called my name. I turned and saw a man approaching. It took me a second to recognize him. Mark's college friend who had called to yell at me about ruining Mark's marriage. My stomach sank. His discomfort was evident from a few feet away. He wanted an apology. He had only heard Mark's side and called me without details. Mark had discussed therapy and manipulation with him. He said he realized that he'd seen Mark do similar things with other friends over the years, making plans and then changing them last minute, expecting people to drop everything to help him and getting angry when they declined. He had dismissed it as Mark being Mark, but now he saw it as a problem. He apologized again and asked for forgiveness for jumping to conclusions. I appreciated the apology and was glad Mark was improving. I walked to my car feeling lighter than I had in months after saying goodbye. My new job best engaged me. My promotion gave me interesting projects and a team that valued my input. I owned my windowed office. I could schedule well. Studying until midnight stopped. I had time for friends, hobbies, and myself. I noticed something while reviewing a report one afternoon. Defying Mark kept my graduation. It caused a chain reaction that resolved family issues. Kids saw adults respecting and setting boundaries. They learned to say no and valued your achievements without demanding sacrifice. Family support meant supporting each other's milestones. After Mark was honest, Allison felt more confident in her marriage. My parents treated Mark and me equally, not expecting me to accommodate him. Even extended family limited Mark. Sometimes family gatherings were tense. Mark occasionally acted entitled. But now there were consequences. People confronted him. I confronted him guilt-free. I sometimes relived graduation. 3 children shouted, "That's our aunt." As I crossed the stage, the whole auditorium clapping and laughing. Grandmother gave honorary degrees. I finished something I worked 7 years for, and the kids were proud. That memory reminded me every day that I'd made the right choice, that I deserved to celebrate my successes without guilt, and that real family support means respecting each other's big moments instead of treating them like inconveniences.